I mean, really, I don't know where that came from, except that I remember, you know, in my young age, I was probably, elementary school, 8th grade, I think I went on one of those career field trip days, and we went to a courtroom, and I got to see what a court stenographer did, and I just thought, wow, this is a great job, right? I mean, the pay is good, you know, it's stable, all those things that you're supposed to look for in a job. And it wasn't until I got to high school that I thought, how crazy was that? Like, really, I can't even sit still for 10 minutes. So the idea of sitting still all day in this tiny chair with this little typewriter, I can't even imagine it now. So I gave up that idea of the stability and the benefits and all those things because I knew that what I wanted to do is I wanted to paint. And when I got to high school, it was such an amazing experience for me because I actually had this great teacher who was giving me these assignments. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. You know, go stipple this image, go find out what that's all about. Find a book cover that you want to replicate. Let's try airbrush, let's try this, let's try that. And it was such an inspiring 4 years of my life that I just kind of knew, okay, well, this is what I'm good at, and I think I can do something with this, but I had no idea what. And then a friend of the family had mentioned Art Center College of Design, which is in Pasadena, and I live in LA, so that was pretty local for me. And she said, you know, it's one of the best schools in the world, and it's here in Pasadena. And I thought, okay, well, I'm sold already. And I remember my parents arranging for me to go to this portfolio review day. And so I got all my artwork from my amazing art classes together, and there were these specific lines that you had to stand in. So there was one for graphic design, one for fine art, one for illustration, one for transportation design. I mean, you name it, it was there. I had no idea where to stand. My mom had no idea where I should stand. And so we picked the first line. It was probably the shortest, I don't remember. And of course, I'm, you know, terrified, nervous, holding my little portfolio, and I get to the front of the line, and the woman flips through my pages, and she said, this is definitely an illustration portfolio. And I thought, okay. So she sent me over to the illustration line, and that was pretty much it. I'm an illustration major. I didn't have any idea what illustration was at the time, but I looked into it. I started taking Art Center High classes. So while I was taking my, you know, high school classes, I would go during the summer and on weekends, and I would take these classes at Art Center so that I was ready when you know, I wanted to apply to this school to have an amazing portfolio to present. And it was fantastic. When I finally got to Art Center and I was basically thrown into this major that I kind of knew nothing about, I was such a baby in a sense when it came to art, because I was so ignorant to this amazing world. And everything was an awe for me. And I remember thinking that, you know, I'm not an amazing artist compared to these other students that I'm surrounded by. I'm not as good as most of them, but I was good enough to be here, and that was enough for me at the time. But I pretty much dedicated myself to, if I had the time, I was going to do 2 projects for every one project that I was assigned, which, if you know anything about Art Center, is crazy, because Art Center is very much run like a business, and you pretty much are guaranteed all-nighters most of the time to finish the work that you're assigned. But I was like, there's no way that I can ever excel at this if I don't reach the level of my peers. And that's what I did. So any project that I was assigned, if I was able, I would do 2 to present to the teacher. And of course, everybody thought I was nuts. But I would saunter in, excited with my 2 little projects and waiting for my critique, which wasn't always good, but what can you do? But I found what I really wanted to do in that first year at Art Center, which was children's books. I thought this was just such a magical thing to illustrate an entire book for a child to be inspired and amazed by it. And so that was what I dedicated myself to. I was going to be a children's book illustrator. And when I look back at this, I'm so glad that I studied illustration versus fine art or graphic design, because I really think that more than anything, it gave me the techniques that I needed to do what I ended up doing. And I think if I had focused more on something very specific, like graphic design or fine art or transportation design, I don't think I would have ended up where I am now. But anyway, so while I was at Art Center, I had the opportunity to make one of my ultimate dreams come true, which was to travel the world. And I mean, remember, even as a little girl, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to travel. I had no idea how I was going to do it, where I was going to go, but this is what I wanted to do. And Art Center had a sister school. And that sister school was in Switzerland. So my best friend and I, who was also interested in children's book illustration, signed up to go to this sister school for 3 months during the summer, and we were going to study illustration. We booked our plane tickets, we had our dorm room, everything down to what we were going to do on the weekends was already planned. And 2 months before we were going to leave, the school closed down. Oh my God. That was probably one of the worst moments of my life. I was so distraught for, I don't know, I think a month. And I remember it was just before my 21st birthday, and my parents decided to alleviate my obvious depression. They were going to take me to Las Vegas for my 21st birthday. It didn't help, not a bit. It was very sad. But after this, I decided to focus more on, my illustration and my work, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to make my dream happen this time, I need to make it happen in another way. And so I was totally focused, but not only on my illustration. I decided that I'm here, we're paying a ton of money for me to go to this school, and I'm going to try out as many things as I can, because I might as well take advantage of what I have right here and right now. So I remember taking graphic design classes, I took a lettering class, I took basically anything you can imagine. And at the time, these new 3D computers and these new 3D programs were anything that everyone could talk about. I mean, it was everywhere. So I thought, okay, why not? I'll take one of these classes. And I was actually fairly good at it. And I actually fairly enjoyed it. So I thought, okay, well, I'll take a couple more classes. And I ended up having this fairly decent demo reel that I was able to show prospective, I guess, jobs. Not that I wanted to do animation, because I didn't want to do animation. But then, alas, I did. I remember sitting on the floor of my parents' den, and I was working on my first freelance illustration project for a children's magazine. This is after I graduated. And one of my friends called up and said, hey, this movie is hiring, would you like to interview? And I was like, no, I don't think so. No interest. And he said, well, why don't you just do it, because it'll be good practice for interviews. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, okay. And I have my demo reel. What's the movie? And he said, well, the movie's South Park. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, there's a TV show called South Park on Comedy Central. Maybe you should check it out. And I'm like, okay. So I went over to my neighbor's house, because we didn't have cable. And I watched an episode of South Park. I was a very sheltered little girl at the time, and this was completely shocking to every part of me. And I was like, holy cow, what is going on here? But I thought, well, now I really don't care if I get the job, right? I'm just going for practice anyway. So I took my little demo reel, which had all